I cleaned their house for 15 years, but then I bought it at auction because they never paid the taxes. For 15 long years, I dusted their picture frames, scrubbed their floors, folded their laundry, and kept their secrets. I was invisible in that house, just a help, a ghost who moved through rooms to make their lives sparkle while mine dimmed more and more with each passing day. My name is Evelyn Carter. I was 22 when I first started working for the Westwoods. I had just lost my mother to a sudden stroke and needed to support my younger brother, Dylan, who was still in high school. Cleaning wasn't a dream, it was survival. I answered a help wanted flyer stapled to a bulletin board at the grocery store. I didn't know that one decision would set the stage for betrayal so deep, it would take over a decade to repay. The Westwoods were the kind of rich that liked to pretend they weren't. Polished wood floors, imported rugs, chandeliers that cost more than a year's salary, and a 10-foot-tall Christmas tree that arrived on a truck every December. But they always acted like they were just barely getting by, like they were one more house party away from broke, as Mr. Westwood liked to joke at their cocktail soirees. There was Lauren Westwood, blonde, refined, the perfect host. She never raised her voice, but her words could cut through you like broken glass. Then there was Henry Westwood, CEO of a real estate firm, loud, boisterous, always smelling like bourbon and power. They had 2 children, Sophie and Grant, both younger than me. Spoiled, bored, and already carrying that particular kind of cruelty you only develop when you grow up watching your parents treat the help like furniture. I was hired as their full-time housekeeper, not just someone to clean the kitchen or tidy the bedrooms. No, they wanted a live-in, someone who would be available 24/7, someone who would know every inch of their home, but never be part of it. I had a small room in the back of the house, near the laundry chute, with no windows. They called it the maid's quarters, like that made it grand. But it was just a closet with a bed. The hours were long, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on most days. I'd rise before the sun to prepare breakfast trays, then spend the next hours wiping down countertops, vacuuming carpets, organizing drawers, and disinfecting every surface Sophie sneezed near. I washed their designer clothes, ironed them, and hung them on velvet hangers in closets bigger than my entire room. I picked up after their parties, the lipstick-stained wine glasses, the cigarette butts in flower pots, the broken champagne flutes left behind in drunken giggles. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I just needed to save enough to send Dylan to college. He was brilliant. He deserved better. I'd tell him over the phone, just a few more months. Then I'll come home and we'll figure things out. But the months stretched into years. Dylan graduated high school, then college. I missed it all, the ceremonies, the birthdays, the holidays, because I was always working, always cleaning. The Westwoods never let me forget my place. At first, they were polite, almost charming. But that faded as soon as they realized I wasn't going anywhere. Lauren would leave post-its on the bathroom mirror saying, "Missed a spot," or "Toilet smells off." Henry would make comments in front of guests like, "Oh, Evelyn doesn't mind staying late, what else would she do?" Even the kids joined in. Sophie once poured juice on the carpet just to watch me panic and scrub it out while she filmed on her phone. But the worst part wasn't how they treated me. It was how they saw me, not as a human, not even as a worker, just a fixture. Something that existed to serve their comfort. I once had the flu so bad I could barely stand. I asked Lauren if I could take the day off to rest. She looked at me, blinked, and said, "And who's supposed to clean the house while you nap, Cinderella?" Still, I stayed. Because every paycheck went straight into an account for Dylan. He didn't know. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to think I was thriving. I sent postcards with fake stories. "I went to the beach today," or exploring new parts of the city. When in reality, I hadn't stepped foot outside the estate in days. There were small moments of kindness, but they were always accidental. Grant once offered me a cold soda after mowing the lawn, but only because he thought I looked super dehydrated and about to faint. Sophie once complimented my handwriting, only to ask me to forge her mother's signature on a school form. Henry gave me a Christmas bonus once, $100 in an envelope that said to our angel, but then deducted it from my January paycheck as advance wages. I thought I had seen it all, but I didn't know then just how deep their entitlement went. I didn't know how cruel they'd become when they saw someone they couldn't control. That moment, the shift from being the help to being the threat was coming. And when it did, everything I thought I knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and gratitude shattered. But before that, there was just me, and their house, and the silence. I knew every inch of that house. I knew which floorboards creaked, which doors stuck in the summer heat, which cupboards were always a mess no matter how often I organized them. I knew what time each family member woke up, how they took their coffee, what medications they secretly hid in the second bathroom drawer. I knew the passcode to their security system. I knew the safe code. I knew the camera blind spots. They never realized that in ignoring me, they were handing me every key to their kingdom. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was just thinking about survival. About getting through one more day without breaking down. About stretching my aching muscles and sleeping 5 hours before starting all over again. 15 years. 15 years of birthdays I wasn't invited to. Of messes I didn't make but always had to clean. Of being asked to stay late, come early, cancel my plans, and smile while doing it. 15 years of standing in the background of their perfect family photos, just out of frame, holding the light reflector or cleaning up spilled champagne. 15 years of knowing that no matter how hard I worked, I would never be one of them. But one day, everything changed. And it started with an envelope. It started with an envelope. A thick, cream-colored envelope slipped under my door early one morning. No name on the front. No return address. Just my name, Evelyn, scrawled in delicate cursive. I froze. It wasn't payday. It wasn't my birthday. No one in that house had ever written me anything personal, not a thank you card, not even a sticky note with my name spelled right. Inside was a letter, just a few lines, typed out. You've served this family for many years. Unfortunately, as of next month, your services will no longer be required. We appreciate your loyalty. Please vacate the premises by the 30th. No signature. No face-to-face conversation. No reason. I stood there, holding that letter with shaking hands, staring at the words like they couldn't possibly be real. After 15 years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of silence, I was being fired. Like I was a temp, not a fixture in their lives. No warning, no conversation. Just a cold dismissal, like I was an appliance they didn't need anymore. I walked down the hallway, clutching the letter, and found Lauren in the kitchen. She was stirring her tea, dressed in her silk robe, looking out at the garden. Lauren, I said, voice dry. What is this? She barely glanced at the paper. Oh, that, she said calmly. Yes. We've decided it's time for a change. The kids are older. We don't need live-in help anymore. I blinked. After 15 years? She didn't even look guilty. Evelyn, you've been paid well. It's not personal. Times change. We're bringing in a professional service now. Rotating cleaners, more efficient. Efficient? I almost laughed. You think someone who doesn't live here, who doesn't know this house the way I do, can keep it running? She sipped her tea. We want people who stay in their place. That sentence broke something in me. And yet, I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just stunned. I turned to Henry that evening, thinking maybe he'd talk some sense into her. But when I entered his office, he was already holding a copy of the letter. His response? You should have seen this coming. You got comfortable, Evelyn. Too comfortable. We need discretion. Lately, it feels like you think you're one of us. One of them? I had never sat at their dinner table. I had never taken a break without being timed. I hadn't even used their pool, despite scrubbing it every other day in the summer. I wasn't one of them. I knew that. But apparently, the very possibility that I might believe I was more than a servant, that I might think I deserved dignity, was threatening to them. I gave you my life, I said, my voice trembling. No, Lauren said, standing in the doorway. You sold us your time. And we've paid. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. I sat on the edge of my small bed, staring at the worn floorboards, the peeling wallpaper, the windowless walls that had been my home for over a decade, and realized how disposable I truly was to them. I had no savings. Everything I made went to Dylan. And now I was jobless, homeless, and humiliated. And the betrayal wasn't over yet. 2 weeks later, I returned early from a grocery run. I still had to work until the end of the month and walked into a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Lauren was on the phone in the dining room, laughing. She's pathetic. Honestly, I'm amazed she lasted this long. Did you know she sent all her money to her brother? Like some kind of martyr? No wonder she still wears those awful shoes. I think she thought we were friends or something. Poor thing doesn't get that people like her don't get happy endings. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, frozen behind the corner. Then she added, "Oh, and make sure the news service sends someone younger next time." That one's practically furniture. I should have felt fury. But in that moment, it was grief. Like something inside me had died, the last flicker of hope that maybe, deep down, I mattered to them. I didn't. I never had. And that realization, that was when the anger came. Pure, focused, blazing. But I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I didn't pack and storm out. No, I smiled. Because if 15 years had taught me anything, it was how to be invisible. How to listen. How to wait. And I knew something they didn't. The Westwoods weren't as rich as they pretended to be. They were drowning in debt. And their property taxes, the ones they were supposed to pay annually, they hadn't paid in years. I knew that because I was the one who sorted their mail. I was the one who filed their receipts. I was the one who hid their overdue notices under other papers when they had guests. They owed tens of thousands. And they were relying on a shady accountant and constant refinancing to keep their empire standing. I also knew their habits, how Henry gambled on risky investments. How Lauren spent thousands on spa treatments and fashion consultants. How Sophie had racked up credit card bills that made Henry punch holes in the garage wall. They lived on illusion. And it was about to collapse. Because I started making phone calls. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd slink away quietly, a disposable shadow erased from their perfect white walls. But they didn't realize that for 15 years, they had handed me every tool I'd ever need to destroy them. They just didn't know I'd ever use them. The night after I overheard Lauren mocking me on the phone, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I sat on my narrow bed with a notebook in my lap and began writing everything I knew, every crack in their pristine facade. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was just waking up. For 15 years, I had been loyal, obedient, grateful. And it had gotten me fired, insulted, and discarded like trash. So I decided to do something I had never done before. I started thinking like them. Lauren used to say at her parties, "You don't get ahead by playing fair, you win by playing smart." I used to wipe her wine glass and think she sounded heartless. But now, that line felt like gospel. So I did what any smart woman would do. I went to the courthouse. Public records are a beautiful thing, especially when you know what to look for. Property taxes, liens, mortgages, bankruptcy filings, all buried in plain sight. It took less than 20 minutes to find the truth. The Westwoods hadn't paid their property taxes in 5 years. They owed $47,800. And a notice of tax lien foreclosure had already been filed. The house was scheduled to go up for public auction in 90 days. I stared at that document like it was a gift from the universe. That mansion, the one I had cleaned and lived in and cried in, was about to be ripped from their hands. And they didn't even know it yet. Because I was the one who always handled the mail. I made sure of it. For weeks, I quietly intercepted every notice from the county, slipping them into my purse before Lauren could see. I kept smiling, kept scrubbing, kept serving breakfast. But inside, I was building something. I researched tax auctions every night after my shift. I watched YouTube videos, read legal blogs, talked to county clerks. I learned how the process worked. It was shockingly simple if you had the money. Which, of course, I didn't. But I had someone who did. Dylan. My baby brother, now a software engineer with a 6-figure income, living in Seattle with his fiancée and a golden retriever. All thanks to the sacrifices I had made. He didn't know how bad things had gotten. I had never told him, never wanted him to worry. But now, I called. Eve? He said when he answered. Everything okay? I hesitated. Then I told him everything, the years of mistreatment, the firing, the unpaid taxes, the auction. There was silence on the line. Then he said, tell me what you need. It wasn't a question. It was a promise. Within 3 days, he wired me $50,000. I've been saving for a down payment, he said. But this is more important. You didn't raise me to stand by while someone walks all over you. I cried after that call. Not because I was broken, but because for the first time, I wasn't alone. I had power now. And time. For the next few weeks, I played the part of the perfect housekeeper. I dusted their art, watered their orchids, wiped the marble counters while watching them unravel. Henry started snapping more, slamming drawers, drinking earlier in the day. Lauren grew tense. Her credit card was declined at a boutique and she screamed at the sales girl like it was her fault. Sophie and Grant were both back home after failing to launch their trust fund startups. The house was full of tension, a cracked castle slowly caving in. And I was the quiet ghost in the corner, smiling as the rot spread. One afternoon, Henry stormed into the living room holding a letter from the IRS. I'd let that one slip through. He cursed, yelling at Lauren about unfiled returns and back taxes. She threw her wine glass. It shattered across the white rug. I was the one who cleaned it up. Are we poor now? Sophie asked dramatically from the stairs. Henry barked, shut up, Sophie, and go find a job. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. It was almost too easy. And then, the auction date arrived. I called in sick that day, said I had a migraine and needed rest. Lauren didn't even respond. She'd grown so used to ignoring me, it didn't occur to her to ask questions. I dressed carefully that morning, clean black dress, hair neat, confidence on like armor. I walked into that courthouse like I belonged there, because I did. The auction was held in a small government building downtown. There were only 4 people bidding on properties that day. Most lots were empty land or boarded up duplexes. But then they got to it. Item 17. 426 Willowbrook Lane. 5-bedroom, 6-bath single-family residence. Minimum bid, $47,800. No one else raised their hand. Because no one else knew that property was up for grabs. Except me. I raised my paddle. Sold. Just like that. The house was mine. I wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh in the face of every insult Lauren had ever whispered, every dismissal Henry had ever thrown my way. But I didn't. I walked out calmly, deed in hand, heart thundering. I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I returned to work like normal. The sale wouldn't be official for 10 more days, time for the county to process the paperwork. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to see their faces when it happened. And oh, when it did, it was perfect. 10 days later, the knock came at exactly 9 a.m. I was dusting the grand piano, not because it needed it, but because I wanted to be standing in that room when it happened. Henry opened the door with a grunt, wearing his usual silk robe and slippers, a mug of coffee in hand. The 2 men on the porch wore city-issued vests and carried clipboards. I knew their names. I had met them at the county office. Mr. Westwood? The taller one asked. Yeah. What's this about? We're here to inform you that this property has been purchased at a tax lien auction. The foreclosure is finalized. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. The color drained from Henry's face. That's impossible, he barked. This house isn't for sale. It's ours. I'm afraid it's not, the man said. The county has seized the property due to unpaid taxes. You were notified multiple times. I never got any notices. Henry roared. I wiped a finger across the piano lid and quietly smiled. Please refer all questions to the county tax assessor's office. But as of now, the deed belongs to the new owner. Lauren appeared behind him, her face pale and tight. What is this? Is this a mistake? No, ma'am. This home now belongs to Miss Evelyn Carter. They turned. and saw me. I stood upright, dust rag in hand, watching their faces twist in confusion, horror, and finally, recognition. Lauren blinked. You? I walked forward, slowly, calmly, as if I were simply bringing out a tray of tea. Yes, I said. I bought the house. You what? Henry's voice cracked. You? How did you even? Public auction, I said simply. You didn't pay your taxes. I did. You don't have that kind of money. Lauren snapped. I tilted my head. No, but I have a brother who does. A brother I supported with this job. With every dollar you gave me while treating me like garbage. This is insane, she hissed. You can't just steal our house. I didn't steal it, I said. You gave it away. Inch by inch. With every overdue notice you ignored. Every glass you made me polish. Every insult. You built this. Henry lunged forward, eyes bulging. This isn't over. We'll sue. We'll get it back. I stepped toward him. Just one small step, but enough to make him flinch. You think the law is going to help you now? I said. Go ahead. I've got the deed. The paperwork. The signatures. Everything you never bothered to check. You were too busy pretending to be royalty. You ungrateful little. Lauren started, but I cut her off. No, I was never yours to command. I was the maid. The one who stayed up late cleaning your vomit off the marble floors. The one who missed her brother's graduation so you could have clean towels for your dinner guests. I gave you 15 years, and you gave me nothing. She opened her mouth, then closed it. You have 72 hours, I said quietly. I suggest you start packing. They didn't believe it at first. They called lawyers. They called accountants. They begged the county to reverse it. But the sale was legal. Binding. Final. They begged me next. Lauren came into the kitchen the next morning, tears in her eyes. Evelyn, please. You can't do this. This house is our life. The kids grew up here. I stared at her. The same woman who once asked me to stay late to iron her napkins. While I had a fever of 102. I grew up here too, I said coldly. But no one cared when I was sleeping in a room without windows. She shifted gears. Okay, fine. We'll buy it from you. Double what you paid, triple. I raised an eyebrow. You don't have the money. Remember? Her face flushed red. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm reclaiming this. The second day, Henry tried threats. You think this makes you powerful? He growled. You think owning this house makes you better than us? I stared at him. No, but it proves that I was never beneath you. By day 3, they were packing. Boxes lined the hallway. Sophie cried dramatically in the living room. Grant smashed a vase on the way out. Lauren refused to speak to me. Henry walked out with his suitcase and didn't look back. When the door shut behind them, I stood in the silence and let the moment settle. I walked through every room, slowly, methodically, touching the walls, the door frames, the furniture. It was mine now. Not because I stole it, but because I endured every insult, every indignity, and never stopped paying attention. I changed the locks that evening. The next day, I called in contractors. The first thing to go was the chandeliers. I had always hated them. They made the ceilings feel heavier than they were. Then the velvet curtains, the gold faucets, the ridiculous marble busts in the hallway, all gone. I sold every piece of their pretentious furniture and used the money to renovate the maids' quarters. I knocked out the walls, installed a window, painted it soft blue, brought in sunlight for the first time. Then I moved in. Not to the master bedroom, that would have been too easy. I stayed in the back of the house, the part they thought I belonged in. But this time, by choice. Because power isn't about where you sleep. It's about who owns the key. And I did. Owning the house wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something I hadn't prepared for. Silence. For the first time in 15 years, there were no footsteps pounding down the staircase, no slamming doors, no barking orders echoing down the halls. The rooms were still, the walls quiet, the air undisturbed. And I didn't know what to do with it. At first, I told myself it was peace. that this was what I had earned: quiet mornings, clean countertops, a soft breeze through the open window of my new bedroom. But slowly, something began to feel off. I wasn't haunted by what I'd done, no. I didn't regret it. But I wasn't satisfied either. Because revenge gives you fire. But when the flames die down, you're left standing in ashes. I kept cleaning the house, even when it didn't need it. I kept making coffee for 2, 3, 4, muscle memory I couldn't shake. I'd pause in the hallway, expecting Lauren to call my name from the master bath, or Henry to bark something from the office. But no one came. Then one night, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But when I did, a voice I hadn't heard in months spoke quietly on the other end. Evelyn? It was Sophie. Not snide. Not arrogant. Just small. Fragile. I didn't know who else to call. I sat down, heart steady. What is it? I asked. There was a long pause. They're getting divorced, she said finally. My parents. Everything's falling apart. Dad's company collapsed. Grant moved in with some weird crypto guy in Florida. Mom's been selling her jewelry. She broke off. I don't want anything from you, she added quickly. I miss home. Not the house. You. I didn't know what to say. The girl who once filmed me scrubbing juice from the carpet now sounded like a lost child. I didn't speak for a long time. Just listened to her breathing, quiet and erratic, on the other end. Then I said, do you remember when you were 15 and you asked me why I always washed dishes by hand, even though we had a dishwasher? She sniffled. Sort of. I told you it was because machines miss the edges, the corners, the details. Sometimes, if you want something truly clean, you have to do it yourself. She didn't say anything. I hope you're learning how to do things yourself now, I added gently. And then I hung up. I didn't hear from her again. But I thought about that call a lot. How she hadn't begged or schemed or pretended. She had just missed something real in her life, and for all her privilege, I had been it. That was when I realized something important. I hadn't just cleaned their house. I had kept it together. I had been the only real structure in their chaotic, shallow lives. The invisible spine holding everything upright. And now that I was gone, everything collapsed. It wasn't a victory march. It was quiet devastation, poetic, slow burning, and final. Months passed. I planted roses in the backyard. I painted the guest room yellow. I finally invited Dylan to visit, and he cried when he saw the renovations. You own this? He asked, smiling wide. I do, I said. Every tile, every nail. Then, one Sunday morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a deed. To a beach house. In my name. Attached was a note in familiar handwriting. You gave me a future. I wanted to give you a piece of peace, D. I drove to that beach house a week later. It was small, humble, quiet, the opposite of the Westwood estate. But it felt like mine the moment I stepped in. That's where I live now. Not because I had to leave the mansion, but because I chose peace. The house I bought at auction, I turned it into a transitional shelter for women like me. Women who spent years in silence, service, sacrifice. Women who gave everything and got nothing back. Now, it's filled with laughter, with healing, with hope. And sometimes, when I walk through its halls, I still remember every cruel word Lauren ever said, every smug look Henry gave, every time Sophie rolled her eyes. But I also remember this. They don't live there anymore. I do. In every wall painted fresh. In every smile from a woman who finally feels safe. In every corner that's finally, truly clean. Because the greatest revenge isn't taking what they had. It's building something better from what they threw away.